Our Bible reading for today is from the book of Ruth, chapter 2, verse 4 until 17. Just then Boaz came from Bethlehem. He said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." They answered, "The Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to his servant who was in charge of the reapers, "To whom does this young woman belong?" The servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She is the Moabite who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab." She said, "Please, let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the reapers." So she came, and she has been on her feet from early this morning until now, without resting even for a moment. Then Boaz said to Ruth, "Now listen, my daughter. Do not go to glean in another's field or leave this one. But keep close to my young women. Keep your eyes on the field that is being reaped, and follow behind them. I have ordered the young men not to bother you. If you get thirsty, go to the vessels and drink from what the young men have drawn." Then she fell prostrate with her face to the ground and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your sight, that you should take notice of me when I am a foreigner?" But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. May the Lord reward you for your deeds, and may you have a full reward from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge." Then she said, "May I continue to find favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, even though I am not one of your servants." At mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come here and eat some of this bread, and dip your morsel in the sour wine." So she sat beside the reapers, and he heaped up for her some parched grain. She ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. When she got up to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, "Let her glean even among the standing sheaves, and do not reproach her. You must also pull out some handfuls for her from the bundles, and leave them for her to glean, and do not rebuke her." So she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley.
Thank you, Charity, for reading that. Good morning, good morning. Okay, let's try that again. Good morning. Okay. Looking out at you guys, you kind of remind me of the day that it's kind of getting a little darker out, and you guys look like you're getting a little sleepy. So we're going to fix that in just a minute. But before I get into that, I wanted to share one of the documents or one of the resources that I've been using throughout this whole series. So this is the Believers Church Bible Commentary series, and it's one that I have on my shelf and I go to quite often. This one about Ruth, I have found very, very helpful in understanding this whole series. And it comes in many ways to a word that we're going to be working with, which if you only know a few words, hesed or chesed is one of the words that you should know. Maybe it's not the top one, but it's definitely in the top 10 ones that you should learn. So we are going to be working with that a little bit, and I'm pulling quite a bit from this book. I don't know if anybody else is getting quite a ringing, but I'm getting quite an echo. Should I maybe move this way instead? That's almost worse. All right, we'll see how we go. As we get started with this, I'm going to encourage you to reach out into that pew and grab the physical Bible that's there, or if you're one of the other people who brought a Bible, you can grab that. And here in a minute, I'm going to have you looking at some of these. So this word hesed is one of the ones that we're going to be working with. And here is the first place that it shows up. It shows up 3 times in the book of Ruth, but it's throughout the entire Bible, at least the Old Testament, and then New Testament, they switch it up for some other words. But here in Ruth 1:8, we get the first reading of it. So Naomi is talking here. She's already decided her husband and her 2 sons have died, and she is going back to Bethlehem. And at this point, her daughter-in-laws are going with her, and she's speaking now to them. But Naomi said to her 2 daughter-in-laws, "Go back, go back each of you to your own mother's house. May the Lord deal," and here it says kindly in this translation. I'm curious what some of the other ones are, but we'll get to that in a minute. This word is chesed, or hesed. Sometimes people translate it with a C instead of a K, but it's never the ch sound. So it's either you don't say the K, or it's kind of a k as you're trying to say the H. So, hesed, with you, and you dealt with. Hang on, let me say that sentence again. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. So this is the first time we get this word, and it's one of the most challenging words to translate well because it has no clear translation in English. So there's all these other words that we put in there. So here are just a few of the translations that we get sometimes. Loving kindness, mercy, steadfast love, loyalty, faithfulness, goodness. There's more. So what we're going to do is I need 3 volunteers who are willing to come up with their Bible and that they don't mind, and I'm going to call out 3 verses. We're going to do what in the old days we used to call sword drills. So you'll have your Bible ready. I'll tell you a verse, and it's the first one to find that verse and step up to the mic and read it for us. So can I get 2 or 3 bold people who are willing to try this? Phil's looking at me like he's ready. No? Okay, maybe not. You're going to come on up. We need 3 people. Matt, come on up. Matt and Lucinda? Oh, and we've got Phil. Phil is being bold enough to come. All right. So we are going to have 3 different spots, 3 different Bible passages that are coming here, and we'll see. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is close your Bible, hold it out so you're ready, and I'm going to show you the first one, and it's the first person who can find that verse and step to the mic and read it to us. Are you ready? And the first one is Genesis 19:19. And the race is on, and and Phil's got it. All right, here we go.
That one was easy. Oops. Okay, and Lot said to them, "Oh no, my lords, I started at 18. Your servant has found favor with you, and you have shown me great kindness in saving my life, but I cannot flee to the hills, for fear the disaster will overtake me and I die."
All right, excellent. So here are some different translations from different Bibles here, and this is where I'm encouraging you to look at the one. If you've just got the Pew Bible, it's going to be the same one here of great kindness. Some of the different translations from the NRSV, you've got great kindness. NASB, which is the New American Standard Bible, they translate that as compassion here. The CEB is the Contemporary English Bible, and that one's just kind. So the King James, you know that Bible, that one they translated as mercy, and the NIV they also translated as as great kindness. Does anybody have another translation that they're looking at currently, and another word that they've translated as other than one of those? All right, well, we'll see what happens with the next one. All right, are you guys ready for the next passage? And it is Exodus 15:13. So we're moving forward through the Bible here. Oh, yep, you've got it. All right, Exodus 15:13, and it is?
In your steadfast love, you led the people whom you redeemed. You guided them by your strength in your holy abode.
Excellent. All right, so here Hesed is being translated as steadfast love in the NRSV. The NSB, it's faithfulness. CEB, great loyalty. Mercy for the King James, and unfailing love for the NIV. So you're starting to see how different people try to use this same word in different ways, and they're having it. We're going to do one more here. All right, are you guys ready for the next one? Matt? You ready? All right. Psalms 85:10. Psalms 85:10. Phil doesn't have it already. All right, come on, man. Let's hear this one. It's actually in the book and not, on the phone. So
I'm going to blame the tools because I'm not using my one from home, but steadfast love and faithfulness will meet, righteousness and peace will kiss each other.
Excellent.
All right, so for this one, we've got several translations here. So, steadfast love, graciousness, faithful love, mercy, or love. All right, thank you guys. I'll have you guys have a seat. Thank you. Give them a round of applause. Good job, Matt. So this is one of those words that is got all sorts of different translations with it, as you can see. And it's one of the key words for explaining this story. In Ruth, it shows up 3 times, but it's sort of a concept that holds with the whole story of people acting with Hesed as God acts with Hesed. So I was trying to think how to explain more about it, and then, not last night, the night before, I realized the Bible Project has a video where they talk about this word specifically. Now, it's in another series that they're doing, but we're going to jump in and watch this, and I have more company up here who's going to help us with it. So we're going to take a moment and watch this video and then jump back in with this word when we have a little better understanding. So here's the Bible Project.
If you tried to describe what God is like, it could be difficult or daunting. But when the people who wrote the Bible pondered the mystery of God, they consistently describe God's character in this way: compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, overflowing with loyal love and faithfulness. We're going to look at this 4th phrase, loyal love. It translates the Hebrew word chesed, which is hard to translate into any language because it combines the ideas of love, generosity, and enduring commitment all into one. Chesed describes an act of promise-keeping loyalty that is motivated by deep personal care. Like in the story of Ruth. Ruth is a foreigner married to an Israelite man. But tragically, her husband dies along with his brother and his father. All Ruth has left is her widowed mother-in-law, Naomi, who has nothing to give her. Naomi tells Ruth she should go back to her people, but instead, Ruth promises to stay by Naomi's side and take care of her. And as other people watch Ruth keep this promise over time, they call it an act of chesed. Notice that Ruth's chesed is not conditional or based on Naomi's worth. Rather, it's an expression of Ruth's character. She just is a generous and loving person who keeps her word. That's chesed. Now, Ruth's loyal love is truly inspiring, but the one who shows the most enduring chesed in the Bible is God. Like in the story about Jacob, who is a treacherous liar even to his own family. But despite that, God chooses him and repeats the promise he made to Jacob's grandfather, Abraham, that he would have a huge family through whom God would restore his blessing to the nations. And so 20 years later, when Jacob realizes how undeserving he is, he says to God, "I'm not worthy of all the chesed you've shown me." And he's right. But God's chesed was never about Jacob's worth in the first place. It's a display of God's generous loyalty to his promise. God's chesed continues into the story of Jacob's descendants, the Israelites. When they're enslaved by Pharaoh in Egypt, we're told that God remembered his promise to Abraham and Jacob, so God defeats Egypt and raises up Moses to liberate the people and lead them into the promised land. And in the story, this is called an act of chesed, because it was about God keeping his word. Now, on their way to the promised land, the Israelites are scared of the nations around them, and they doubt that God can protect them. So the people threaten to kill Moses and appoint a new leader to take them back to Egypt. God is understandably hurt and angry, but Moses steps in and says, "Forgive the sin of these people because of your great chesed." Notice that Moses asks God to forgive not because the people deserve it, but because it's consistent with God's own character. And God agrees, and he recommits himself to a people that don't want to be committed to him. In the Bible, God is loyal and loving for no other reason than it's just who God is. Of course, he wants his people to respond with chesed in return, but even when they don't, God's chesed remains. The prophet Hosea compared Israel's chesed to a morning mist that's here one moment and gone the next. But God's chesed is enduring. Like in the celebration of Psalm 136 that opens by saying, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good," and then 26 times repeats, "His chesed is forever." And so, after centuries of Israel betraying their commitment to God, and after humanity's long history of violence and death, God still kept his promise in a dramatic and drastic way by becoming human and binding himself to us in the person of Jesus. And the people who followed Jesus of Nazareth said that in him they encountered the God of Israel, who is full of loyal love and faithfulness. Jesus is the ultimate loyal and loving human. And in his life, death, and resurrection, God opened up a new future for all of us and for all of creation. And God did this because it's just who God is: generous, loving, and eternally loyal to his promises. And when we experience the purity and power of God's loyal love shown through Jesus, it compels us to reimagine why and how we can show chesed back to God and to the people around us. This is what it means to say that God is overflowing with loyal love.
So as you can tell, that is a key part of describing who God is for the old people of God. They were saying God is a God of Hesed. And it was a key part of how they described God. And if you look in the Old Testament, it's one of the words used most often to describe who God is. And we are then invited to imitate God. And in the story of Ruth, Ruth is definitely someone who imitates that for us as someone who is acting in Hesed. But what about Boaz? Boaz is one of the other main characters, and he also is named as one of the people who acts in Hesed. Or, here in Ruth 2:20, it's kind of unclear whether this is referring to Boaz or as God. Now, it's interesting here because God often works through people. So I saw a lot of debate between the people I was reading. Is this talking about God? Is this talking about Boaz? Or is this talking about God through Boaz? Which is kind of the place where I land with it. So this is what Ruth 2:20 says. Then Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "Blessed be he by the Lord, whose kindness, or hesed, has not forsaken the living or the dead." And it's not clear which person is it talking about. Is it the person who provided the food, or is it God? So here we have that statement. And it keeps going on, and we had this word before of our kinsman redeemer that was also there from last week. So a little bit there. With Boaz, we see, though, some interesting reasons why he's named as someone who's acting with Hesed. With the story, and I'm not going to read through all of this, but I want to sort of highlight some of it. This is the passage that was read today, and it fits in between the two passages that we read last week. And it's the first major encounter between Boaz and Ruth. And it's interesting to see how he acts as a person. When we start off here, I found it interesting. They have his greeting to his workers, and then their response, "Blessed be the Lord." And they respond, "The Lord bless you." Well, for me, that just speaks to this guy's character, that his workers have that kind of a relationship with him, that they have this kind of a greeting. It tells me a little bit about his character, and the people who work under him are saying to him, "The Lord bless you." I've had some bosses that I would have struggled to say, "The Lord bless you." I would have some other things. So it says a little bit of the character of the boss here, or Boaz. And it talks here about the interactions he's saying. Now, if you notice there in verse 7, verse 6. Again, it doesn't name Ruth just as herself, but again, it's always tying her as a female from Moab, a Moabite. So there's always this reminder of us of who she is. But then Boaz talks to her and says, "Now listen, my daughter, do not go and glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close." And did you notice how last week, when Ruth was talking to Naomi, she said, "Oh, I'll go and hang out with the young men." and that Boaz had told her? Here it's that showing that no, he'd actually said, stay with the young women, the same way that Naomi did. So stay close to my young women. Keep your eyes on the field that is being reaped, and follow behind them. I have ordered the young men not to disturb you. If you get thirsty, now it's interesting, it goes on here, because this part of the instructions, when I talk a little bit more about the passages in a little bit, it doesn't name some of this of giving people something to drink, but it's even more his generosity here. If you get thirsty, go to the vessel and drink from what the young men have drawn. I'm going to skip down and keep going here. So Boaz answers her. She sort of falls on her face, says, why are you being so gracious to me? And he says to her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me. This is in many ways that first act of hesed that we see. And then it goes on, may the Lord reward you for your deeds, and may you have the full reward from the Lord, the God of Israel. Now this next part we'll come back to a little later. Here it names it, under whose wings you have come for refuge. The words wing there, and later on we're going to see when she asks Boaz to spread his cloak, the word is actually the same word. So it's interesting here that Boaz is saying to her, under God's cloak you are, or under God's wing you are finding refuge. And then she comes to him who acts the same way as before, as God's hesed for her, and she is asking him to spread this same word, the cloak or the wing, over her for protection. We'll come to that a little later. So then, after that encounter, he has some instructions that he gives to the other farmhands there and says, let her glean even amongst the standing sheaves, and do not reproach her. You must also put out some handfuls for her from the bundles, and leave them for her to glean, and do not rebuke her. So why is he doing this? As a farmer, thinking about this is your economics here. He is giving some of his food away. But what he's really doing is he's following the instructions that God has given. In two different places, and again, we're going back to Deuteronomy and Leviticus the same way we did last week. But there are these rules that God has given to the community to help care for other people. So the first one from Leviticus 23, and it's verse 22. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap to the very edges of your field, or glean or gather the gleans from your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor and for the alien. I am the Lord your God. Well, these are some interesting instructions. You've got a field, but you're not supposed to gather all of it, but leaving the edges for the poor, the aliens, and the widows around you. It goes on, and this is one from Deuteronomy. When you reap your harvest, when you reap your harvest in your field and forget a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be left for the alien, for the orphan, and the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all of your undertaking. Here are these instructions given by God for how they're supposed to be farming. Can I ask somebody to come? I'm going to get a drink, and I'm going to ask somebody to come and read this. This is that Deuteronomy passage a little bit more fully, and I want you to hear this and listen for the concern that God has for us as people.
You shall not deprive a resident alien or an orphan of justice. You shall not take a widow's garment in pledge. Remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you from there. Therefore I command you to do this. When you reap your harvest in your field and forget a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be left for the alien, the orphan, and the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all your undertakings. When you beat your olive trees, do not strip what is left. It shall be for the alien, the orphan, and the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, do not glean what is left. It shall be for the alien, the orphan, and the widow. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore, I am commanding you to do this.
Thank you. So Carla's had a catch in her throat for the last couple of days, and I'm feeling it coming on for me. So pray for my health that I can keep talking. When we look at this passage, it's interesting, and often when God comes to the people, God reminds them of, look, I was a God who saved you in Egypt. I brought you out of the land of slavery, and I've blessed you. You are supposed to turn around and do the same. I'm a God of Hesed who has loved you and stayed faithful to you and cares for the people around you. You likewise are supposed to be like me in that. And almost all of the rules that God gives, the 10 Commandments are based this way. I am the Lord your God who saved you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Therefore, respond in these ways. I had a professor who said we really should, every time we read those commandments, we should go back to the beginning and say that part before we read each of those 10 commandments. Because it's why we do these things. Why do we act the way we do? It's because God is a God of Hesed who cares for us, who loves us, who has compassion on us. All those things that Hesed means. And we then are supposed to respond like that. And the Bible is full of all sorts of people that don't. And it's really cool to read a story where we have the two main characters who do. That's one of the amazing things with this book, is it's showing us an example of two humans who actually live like God intends us to in many ways. And it's an invitation for us to look at these two as models for how we are to live. So we have these 3 times that it's mentioned in this book. The first one we've read, and it was said, and it was the first act of Ruth and Orpah here, this first act of Hesed towards Naomi. The second one is Boaz is acting in a way that Naomi names him, or God, or both of them together, as acting in Hesed. This last one that comes in Ruth, we'll sort of wrap up the story with this, in Ruth 3:10. And I'm going to read, I'm going to invite you to come and read this part again. And I'll just point out 2 of the words here. That cloak that it says there, that again is that word that was translated as wing in the other one.
When Boaz had eaten and drunk and was in a contented mood, he went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain. Then she came stealthily and uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight the man was startled and turned over, and there, lying at his feet, was a woman. He said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your cloak over your servant, for you are next of kin." He said, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. This last instance of your loyalty, Hesed, is better than the first. You have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, do not be afraid. I will do for you all that you ask, for all the assembly of my people know that you are a worthy woman."
Thank you, thank you. All of the people know that you are a worthy woman. Her act of Hesed is named again. In these 3 times of it being named, I think it summarizes our story. It's a woman who acts with Hesed towards her mother-in-law at the beginning. It's a man who acts toward Hesed towards the people who are poor and the foreigners. And as I was mentioning, when I looked in the Believer's Commentary, it names this passage in a really interesting way. Often we want to know the details. Oh, uncovering the feet. There's some interesting translations with feet there. Is this something sexual? And the way that the commentary talked about it is that this is sort of hidden in cloud and off in the dark, and we hear this conversation almost from a distance. And even though we want to come in and see what are the details that are going on there, there's sort of a distance there, and we are told the key parts that we need to know. And it's that this woman is acting again in Hesed. And this man recognizes it and says, "Wow, you are a worthy woman." It's a story of people acting in Hesed. And often in the Bible, people aren't. So I think it's a wonderful way to end saying this entire book, this entire story is encouraging us, saying, here is who God is. This is the character of God, a God that invites us not to live straight up to the edge of our means, but to leave space enough that we have, that we can give generously to those in need. A God that stays faithful to us and loves us even when we fall into hard times. A God that works to redeem us when we struggle and fall on hard times. And that same God invites us to act in those ways. So I want you to think about this word. I want you to think about your life. If God was writing instructions about Hesed for your life, maybe you're not a farmer. I don't know actually any of you who make your living by farming. But what would the instructions be given to you in that same way of leaving that edge, that border for other people? What would that be like for you? How would God be giving you instructions to live with all of this? Hesed. I'll let you continue to think about that. I'll just name one space for me. I think of my time. It's often when I see Jesus is walking around, and I would have thought of him as a busy person. But he's constantly being interrupted, and he takes the time to engage with people. One of the ways that I think about saving some of the margins or those edge spaces for myself is in the time that I have. When I encounter someone, am I so busy that I have to rush through everything, or do I have some time that I can give for that person? When they say, "Do you have time to talk?" Yes, I do. I can make other things move, or I can shift it. There are some times where I say, I have a meeting, but you know what? I have some space later that I can come. And that's one of the ways that I use my time, hopefully, to try to live in this way. That's not a financial thing in some ways, but in other ways, time is money. That's one way. I don't know your life exactly, but I encourage you to think of this is the God that we serve, a God who is concerned about the poor, a God who looks at the world and says, look at these things that are going on. I love, care, I hesed these people, and I want you to do the same. So I can't speak for what the invitation is for you, but I know that God says, act as I do. Be like me in the world. And as we end this book, this is what I think we should be doing. Now, next week, we're going to start a new series, which we're talking about being witnesses of God's love. But really, we should have put maybe this word in, but it may have confused us. Being witnesses of God's hesed. This is what we're invited to be. And we'll pick that up again next week. Let me close this in prayer. God, you are a God who has been loyal, faithful, loving, steadfast to us. Throughout history, when we have not been following you, when we have fallen on our face, when we have stabbed each other in the back, when we have lived in violence and struggles for power, you have constantly come and you have redeemed us. You have set us right. You have made space for us, and you have brought people who have acted kindly to us. And you invite us to be like you. God, send your Spirit and fill us with your hesed. And as we go out from this place, and as we continue as a congregation, may we be people who are known as people of your hesed. May the world come to know you through our actions, through our words, and through the way we choose to use our time. And may your love shine through us well. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.